Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And again, welcome back to another author interview here on the show. Now, before we begin, I do want to say I know it's been a while since I last posted on the channel. I have been busy getting ready for the month of May, as well as getting everything ready, but I am here to showcase the final guests for the month of April. And joining us today, making their official debut, is an author I'm sure many of you have seen on social media. She is a New Hampshire author, and her debut novel, Lady Justice and the Sisterhood of the Crones, is a woman-centered story set in Maine. She is a special education teacher in Concord with 20 years of experience as an educator, and building and supporting community engagement are priorities for her. And over the last 5 years, she has created a community-sustained thrift shop in the high school. Over 1,000, or I should say 10,000 items have gone home with students at no charge. And over the summer, she can be found visiting Peaks Island when not writing her novel. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, author Jennifer Speidel. Jennifer, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, Jennifer. I am so excited to have you here. And also, congratulations to you as well, because I've been seeing a lot of your posts for your book, and it's got a lot of, praise, reaction. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jennifer.
And then we talked about it before, but here's the book.
Hmm. Beautiful cover, I must say. Beautiful cover.
Yeah, it wasn't what I envisioned, but when it came through, I just loved the smirk on her face. It really captured some of the feeling that I was hoping um, readers would get when they read the book. So yeah, I
Nice.
love the cover.
That's awesome, Jennifer. Now, without spoiling too much, what can you tell us about your debut novel?
Sure. So, like you said in the intro, it's woman-centered. It has and women-centered, but focusing on the Crones. So I am a recent empty nester. I have my oldest got married, my youngest graduated from college and moving to Boston. And thinking about this last phase of my life, I'm an English teacher and a special ed teacher, so that the maiden, the mother, and the crone is our archetype that I've taught. And crones, when you look up the definition, are old and ugly and mean, and they do awful magic. But crone traditionally had been the wisest woman of the matriarchy. So as I'm sort of envisioning this last portion of my life, I really wanted to embrace that crone phase.
Hmm.
There's a fantastic photographer in Maine called Ruby Jean, and she started the Goddess Project, and it was taking pictures of women in their 70s and older, and just capturing, the beauty of age, and that was part of sort of all of that spinning around in my head. I really wanted to, highlight crones, and in the book they come together, making friends in a really joyful experience, and they are looking to fix some of the negative things in our world, misogyny, rape, a lot of the patriarchal things that aren't necessarily so great for women, and they
Hmm.
use their experience to do that, with allies, maidens, mothers, men, and they do it with joy.
Beautiful, Jennifer. Simply beautiful. Now, before we dive into sort of the behind the scenes of Lady Justice, let's talk a little bit more about you as the author. So, how did this book come about? What would you say definitively was your aha moment that created that spark to create this novel?
So it was our political climate. We have several. Um, politicians, one in particular, who seems to get away with a lot of stuff. And I had said to somebody, it's almost like he sold his soul to a crossroads demon. And that's how Maven was born. Maven is the crossroads demon in the book. And when I say crossroads demon, I feel like, oh my goodness, that's supernatural. But it's just that component of it is very minimal. But she decided that there was so much evil in the world. What more could she possibly get from the people that she interacted with, and decided to flip to the other side. So it was that conversation that produced, hey, I wonder if maybe he did. And then the book sort of spiraled from there.
All right. And also, kind of a little bit of a starting fan question. One viewer would like to know, was Lady Justice and the Sisterhood of the Crones the original title, or was this the final title you decided to go with after a series of revisions and re-edits?
No, it was really the only title. Once you get into the last third of the story, Lady Justice is someone who comes up quite a bit, and where I was trying to build a sisterhood, it just felt like that was the name. It's a little bit long. Sometimes when I'm typing it in, I'm like, wow, maybe I could have chosen a shorter title. But I think it encompasses all the different parts.
All right.
So, yeah.
Nice. Very, very nice. All right. So now let's actually dive into this book, Jennifer. And we'll start at the very beginning. And we'll actually go into another starting fan question. And this viewer would like to know, when you began writing Lady Justice, what was your initial goal with this book? And has it changed?
I think thinking about that first aha moment, that goal was to, live in a really a fantasy world, I guess, where our political system really was based on democracy and doing the right thing. So that was the initial goal, followed very closely with creating a story that was about older women just really feeling comfortable in who they are and with each other, and then fixing these problems. So I think it didn't really change, and I think I met that goal, but it did shift from a him focus to a her focus, that where it was focused on really the Crones and their experiences and what they could do to make things better.
All right. And ultimately, what is sort of the promise you're making to readers who pick up this book for the very first time?
Well, I think that would be that this last phase in a woman's life can be spectacular. And it can be filled with relationships, and joy, and freedom to do the things that you want to do. And that's what the Crones embrace when they get to the island. They are just very excited to be there and engaging with each other. So yeah, that was my focus.
Awesome. And when you began writing this in the initial draft form, what really surprised you about the early writing aspects as opposed to the refinement nearing publication?
One of the things that I sort of took in, that I talk to students about, is getting material on the page. So I was surprised how easy it was to just sort of fill the pages. I had started with each chapter has a quote and a title, and I had created those titles. One of them being tradition is a 4-letter word. Another one, is your wife available? And use those to sort of center my thinking on what that particular part would be about. And again, I just put everything I could think of on the page, and then went back and did tons of revisions. But the initial getting, whatever, 120,000 words out was not the challenge for me. It was the editing.
I have to agree. Editing always seems to be the more challenging aspect when it comes to the later parts of writing, because that's when you really have to decide, okay, I know I like this section of the book, but now looking at it with a different perspective, does it actually contribute to the story, or is it just, the fluff? I remember one colleague of mine said that we want just the meat of the book. We have to get rid of the fat. We have to get rid of it because it's not going to be helpful. And sometimes that's a very difficult process for us authors because, when we initially write something that we love and enjoy, we then have to make a decision. Do we want to keep it, or has our story changed so much that it has no place? And yes, sometimes we do make slight alterations but keep the same theme or message. Other cases we don't, and it's not easy. And that also goes in a sense for characters as well. Sometimes we'll start off with a long character list, but after working with our readers and editors, that character list will be very, very small. And that actually goes into another fan question, Jennifer. One of my viewers would like to know, how did you make sure that the characters presented in Lady Justice felt authentic to the world you were presenting them in? And to go a little step further, the reason why they asked this question and why I always like to delve a little bit deeper is that I'm sure you have seen characters in other works of fiction that are only there for either clout or just a caricature or stereotype of a specific person. And it doesn't make sense for that type of person to exist in a certain genre of storytelling.
Yeah. I tried to be really hyper focused on who was being highlighted, who was there, and what their purpose was. So the first part of your question, I envisioned specific people to sort of start off for the characters, and then in my head, I was thinking, okay, where did they grow up? What was their relationships like? Who were their friends? What part of the country were they from? How did that influence the choices that they made? So by doing that, I hope that I've given them each, their own individual personalities that have some meat behind it, not just because there are a lot of characters in this book, and that was one of the things that I was a little concerned about when I had some beta readers, but I never got any feedback that there's too many. So I just, in that revision process, I made sure that they were as unique as they could possibly be, that they had professions that they had either retired from or enjoyed so much they didn't want to retire. So by focusing on each woman and the few men that are in the book, I think that I ensured that the characters should have been there. Now, there are a couple moments when I look back now that I think, oh, I might have done that differently at this point in my writing, because I've written another book since then. This book was written in 2024. But it's not that I dislike the character. I just think there's a scene or two that maybe could have changed a little bit. So yeah, I tried to envision what this woman would look like, what she would sound like, and tried to include all of those pieces so that you could, so that readers could hopefully see what I'm seeing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this kind of goes into a semi-spoiler-ish territory, so feel free to give as much or as little. But one of my viewers would also like to know, do you have a particular scene or chapter that was A, your favorite to write, and B, the most difficult?
So my favorite chapter to write is the one that I mentioned, Is Your Wife Available? That chapter was developed after I listened to the Testaments. I love Margaret Atwood. And we're going to talk about inspiration in a bit, but after reading the Testaments, and there's a scene in there where these educated career women are stripped of their pretty impressive responsibilities. And I thought, what would it be like if this happened to men? And the scene that is your wife available? The Crones have come together and made some changes, and they have decided that men have proven, for the most part, that the decisions that they make aren't based on the community. So they have revoked their ability to have a checking account, to have a credit card, similar to what happened in the Testaments. So that scene was very fun to write. And it's told through one of the male characters, and in his head, he's thinking, you know, we didn't see this coming, but wow, we've treated women really, really poorly. And I can see why they're doing this. So that one was really fun.
Nice. All righty. All righty. And now, kind of leading into what I could call the beginning of the reflective aspect, Jennifer, this next question is a very personal question because it often makes a lot of my guests reflect and think. And it's the notion of, when did you feel confident in yourself to tell people and to tell yourself that you are an author? And I'll give some context for this question. So, the reason I asked this question a lot on the show, it's that I found it very interesting to hear people's thoughts on, why they wanted to be an author in the first place. Some people wanted to tell stories, some people wanted to share stories, others just wanted to have an outlet, whatever the reason. It is endless. But to create something is one thing. To share it and acknowledge it is another thing entirely, because you are presenting yourself to the world stage. And there seems to be kind of like a stigmatism to how you tell people that you are an author. An example, if you say that you are a traditionally published author, you get one reaction.
Mhm.
But if you tell people that you're an indie author or a self-published author, the reactions are, on some slight occasions, borderline negative, because
Yeah.
some people still do not believe that self-publishing or indie publishing is legitimate. That even goes the same for hybrid publishing. I've had a few authors who are hybrid published who have been told, oh, you are a vanity published author because you had to pay for whatever reason. And going even forward, some people have even said on the show that they still haven't told their friends or family that they are an author because, they want to just be secret to themselves. And that, again, it's a very personal thing to let people know that you are this. So ultimately, Jennifer, for you when writing Lady Justice, when did you feel confident in yourself to not only tell yourself that you are an author, but to also make the step forward and let other people know, either friends, family, or colleagues, that you have worked on this passion project of yours?
That imposter syndrome is pretty real. So I think because I'm an educator and I do often share little bits of stories with students to sort of help them envision um, where we're going on an assignment, or painting that picture in their head, because a lot of the students I work with do have difficulty creating those pictures in their heads. So I think sharing to some groups was really fairly easy for me. But as an overall, getting out into the community and being like, hey, I'm an author, that I'm still struggling with. And I think I get better each time that I have a conversation. Even yesterday, I was speaking to a new bookstore in the place that we went to visit, and I feel like I totally stumbled across telling him what the book was about. So each time I do it, I start to feel more confident, but I think that's something I'm going to have to work on for lots of years, where I feel like I'm a published author, but I did go hybrid. So there is some of that in the back of my mind. But what people don't understand is I could have publicists, or what's it called? The people that you hire to get you into. It's all about money, no matter how you look at it. whether you're hiring somebody to represent you for a traditional publishing, I decided that if I was going to invest money, that the hybrid might be the easiest way for me to meet my goals. And my goal had been that I wanted to see my book in a bookstore or a library.
Absolutely. Very, very true. And this kind of goes now forward into, what does it mean to be an author in the digital age? Because it has changed significantly in the last 2 decades. And, COVID has definitely played a factor into that, where we have a plethora of new authors who began, their writing careers during the pandemic. I myself, I was also an author that, started their career. In fact, a lot of people that I've had on the show, especially since 2025, they all began their careers during the pandemic. Some have been working on writing earlier, but then got published during the pandemic. And tying it into social media and the digital age, I mean, social media is a huge tool for authors. It allows
Mhm.
us to connect with our readers. It allows us to post content. It allows us to learn new and upcoming events that we can go to and promote ourselves. I myself was able to go to the LA Festival of Books
Mhm.
on the 18th of this month, which was awesome. First time selling, great experience, and it's also a good place to network. But like everything, it's a double-edged sword, especially when it comes to social media. We leave ourselves exposed to the darker sides. It heightens our writer's block and further increases our imposter syndrome. And I know this probably may not have happened to you, or maybe you not have encountered it as frequent, but I've had a lot of people on the show express that on some posts that they have made for their books, the comments or reactions have not been very, very positive. And that can be very deflating for
Yeah.
an author's self-confidence. Because again, it goes back to this notion of you are being exposed. You are presenting a raw version of yourself to the world that you would have loved to kept hidden. So ultimately, Jennifer, when you decided to, publish your book and start promoting it on the various social media platforms, what has kept you disciplined and making sure you stuck to the original goals that you set out for yourself on this journey of yours?
Well, a little tidbit about myself. When I initially graduated, it was with a speech communications degree, and I worked in public relations and marketing. Did that for about 5 years. Started to have a family. 9/11 happened, and I didn't necessarily want to, fly around anymore. Had a lot of clients throughout the country, and happened to see a brochure that said, loan forgiveness for special ed teachers, and looked into that to because teaching had been my initial goal when I went to college, um, and then was exposed to some new things and decided to go with PR and communications. So part of that is it's coming full circle back to where I started in my career. So beginning and ending are kind of bookmarked. Um, so I'm applying some of the things that I would have taught clients to how I'm running my social media. And I've been lucky to not, I know it's not a, if it's a win to have some of those negative comments, but I haven't had that yet. I'm bracing myself for it. So I think that had like, had I had more negative feedback on posts, I might be a little bit more shy, but where I haven't had anything yet, I'm continuing to come up with new ideas and post as much as I can.
Awesome. Now this kind of goes into another question, Jennifer, which I've also asked a lot of authors on the show. And it's kind of a debate question. And this question is from your own experiences and what you have seen, in the industry from, posting and interacting with other authors, whether in person or online. Do you feel that because of the pandemic, we have now reached a golden age of new voices in the publishing industry, new authors, or because of the pandemic and leading to the rise of AI and artificially created books and content that we are slipping into a artificial technological dark age?
Ooh, I think AI is terrible. As far as publishing books go, I can't imagine why anybody would think of that as writing personal. So that's just my own personal belief. Um, I know that there's a lot of people use a lot of different strategies to get their thoughts out, and I've heard of some authors who write everything in longhand on notebook paper, which to me is, oh my goodness, that would be overwhelming. So I did type all mine and then revise and all of that. But that was the extent of my computer involvement. So personally, one of the things, so in 2022, there were a bunch of books that came out. So again, right, 2022, yes, right after the pandemic. And a genre just sort of popped up onto my radar, which was women's midlife paranormal fiction. And I was like, what is this? And when I started to explore it, there's some of it that can be very more like fluff, and then there's some that's just really amazing. And I think that Lady Justice does fall into that women's midlife paranormal fiction. So I think if that was something that came out of the pandemic, and I feel like it was, then that was a really good thing. So AI being a separate issue, I think the voices that we're hearing because of this opportunity is only a benefit.
Absolutely, 100%. And now we're going into probably one of my favorite segments of the interview, and that is, of course, the business side of being an author. Now, as an icebreaker question for this segment, when it came to marketing your book, what did you really learn, or rather, I should say, what really surprised you about that aspect of the business? And looking back on it, is there anything you would have done differently?
Wow. I definitely would have chosen a different publisher. They're in London, and there's been some significant hurdles with that.
Mm,
When I order books, it's hundreds of pounds worth of shipping costs. And then I got a bill from FedEx for the tariffs and so the cost has been huge. So I think I would have done something more locally. Um, let's see what else. What I learned with marketing. Well, I think initially when I was building my social media platform, I was kind of, yes, like people would come up and I'd be like, follow, 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 follow. And ended up with, thousands more follows than I had following. So in the last 6 months or so, I've been sort of more careful with that, looking for my targeted audience and trying to find my readers. So and I just started social media in May of last year, so it's just coming up on a year. So those first 6 months, I think I should have been more targeted in my approach to looking for readers.
all right. And actually, speaking of readers, that kind of goes into the next question when it boils down to, who exactly do we write for? Because for us authors, we write for ourselves first and foremost. But when we go about and publish our works, that's when we have to really figure out, okay, we've written a book, but who exactly is this for? Is it for
Okay.
readers like us or for the genre that we're writing in? So when it came down to understanding the readership, Jennifer, how much research did you really do to really find the right readership for your books? Or did you even do any research for your readership and just published your book within the genre that it fits in?
So I've been when I wrote it and published it, I hadn't really done a lot of research. In my head, I was thinking this is a woman-centered book written for women of midlife and older. So they were my target audience. Since then, I've been looking for venues to, have book talks, um, have the book available where those women would be. So the research came after the fact. Having found some books like Kirsten Miller's The Change, which was that first book that I read that just blew my mind, about the friendship of older women and how embracing, menopause and kids moving out, and just, a lot of times we're told that, I have to sort of sit around and cry about the fact that my kids are now grown up and doing what they're doing, but I'm really excited about their lives. My oldest got married, my youngest is graduating from Emerson. My oldest has a fantastic job, so I'm really excited for their future. It wasn't a sad thing for us. It was a very freeing thing, like, oh, what are we going to do now? My husband is also a teacher, so we have our summers off. Yes. So.
Awesome. And kind of another question too, which is very interesting, is the balancing of marketability and individuality. Because as I've learned from a lot of authors on this show, that is probably one of the many difficult things to really harness as an author. Because yes, you want to showcase your voice and your individuality, but you also have to be realistic and practical of your book and the genre that you're writing in, because everyone has a certain expectation of a genre. Readers expect a book in a fantasy novel to go a certain way because it follows either a familiar roadmap or trope sequence, and not a lot of authors do that. For me in particular, I write my stories based upon the books that I've read, and a lot of people have enjoyed that. Now, has it been everyone's cup of tea? No, I've had a few people who have said that while the book is good, it's not what they were expecting, which I completely understand. And you know what? That's a fair compliment. So for you, Jennifer, how did you balance your voice as the author, but also understand the genres that this book is a part of? There are going to be certain expectations that readers are looking for.
Yep. So a couple years ago, I came across, oh, I just lost her name. It'll come to me. An author who wrote The Heroine's Journey and just how to write it versus the hero's journey. And having read that, I've always loved the hero's journey. The call to action, the wise mentor, all of that. But with a hero's journey, he ends the story alone. He's successful, he's a hero, but whether or not he's pulled a community in or not, he sort of walks off in the distance by himself, versus the heroine's journey, where they'll pull in their community resources. And same thing, call to action, there's a mentor, all of that stuff. So that was what I was hoping to achieve with this book, Maven's heroine's journey. So where does she start? What is her call to action? Who is she going to surround herself with? And in the end, where does she end up? And I feel like having that as my goal, that I accomplished that. Especially, I've had a couple people say to me, I really like the end of this book. And when I didn't have a really great sense of where it was going to end until the very end. And then that is also one of my favorite parts of the book too, how that journey is complete. What happens to Maven, I don't want to give anything away, but that has been probably my favorite part of the book too, is how it ends. But it really followed that heroine's journey. So whether or not, I feel like we don't hear a lot of people discussing that. Gail Carringer, that's her name. But when I read that, how to write this way, I really enjoyed her perspective. So that had been my goal, was to use her guidance and to create my tale through that story.
Awesome. And now on the topic of comments and reviews, what have the reviews been like for Lady Justice?
A couple of them have started with, this wasn't what I thought this book was going to be, but, and then they go in and talk about, the relationships between the women and the joy that is embedded within the story. So that part was interesting. And as a teacher, that's one of the things that I say to students. When a student says to me, I've never finished a book, which, breaks my heart, I work really hard to find that book for them because they just haven't found the right book yet. And we talk about that a lot in class, that, just because a book is, on the New York Times bestseller list, or your friend likes this book, or it's super popular, that doesn't mean that it's the book for you. So finding my audience was really important. Yeah.
All right, Jennifer. All right. And now we're going into another favorite segment of the business site, and that is probably the rapid fire round. Now, this round is a series of fan questions that I have kept for this particular segment. Now, some of these have stumped some authors on the show, so I'm curious to see if you might be able to break the curse for some of these questions.
Okay.
All right. First question. As a reader and an author, which do you prefer in storytelling, themes or tropes?
Themes.
Excellent.
But I think that's my aid too. When I first got onto social media, I had an account before. That was my own private account. But as I got into Bookstagram and all of that, I was like, what are they talking about? Oh, themes. Okay. So yeah. Yeah.
All right. Now, as a reader and also an author, in your opinion, what is the most overused trope in fiction and the most underappreciated?
Overused. Thinking about all of the posts that I see, the whole enemies to lovers one, I feel like it sets us up for a strange dynamic in real life if that's your expectation. I've been married 26 years, and my relationship did not start with an enemy. It started with a friend, and the successful relationships of others that I know about, who've been married, lots and lots of years, those were all friendships. But yet it does seem to be super popular, this whole, they're forced together and they really hate each other, and then they end up, in the end being mad about each other. So I think that one is overused and really sets us up for not the greatest expectations in real life for relationships.
All right. Now, what about underappreciated or underused?
Personally, I really love found family. Um, in conjunction with intergenerational relationships. So that, that 20-year-old that is friends with a 60-year-old, and learning from both ways. So the 60-year-old's learning all of the things that 20-year-old in this new world, and then vice versa. So I really like those intergenerational relationships that pop up in books that don't happen as often as I think we could have them in there.
Awesome. All right. Now, here's another one. This one has stumped a few people. Of the 5 physical senses, as an author, which is the most difficult to replicate in storytelling?
Most difficult. I would definitely go sight and hearing and smell. Those are all super easy. So maybe that sense of touch. There is only a little itty bitty romance in this book. So it doesn't get into that whole, brushed my hand on his arm and those types of things. So that one was more difficult, I think, for me as a writer to convey, was a sense of touch.
All right. All right. Next one. This is a pretty good, fun one. Now, You have an unlimited budget, and you can only choose one of the two to fully flesh out Lady Justice. Your choices are a full audiobook production with some of the top narrators in the industry, a movie deal with the director of your choice, or a limited series starring one of your favorite TV actors. Which one would you pick?
The limited series. I feel like we are in a moment in time right now where women are speaking up. Gen X is starting to be Crones. So we're the generation, the forgotten generation, the generation that our parents had to be reminded that it was 10 o'clock and where their children were. So I think that we are on the precipice of women really speaking out and like my characters sort of having enough of some of the things that are going on. So a limited series would be perfect.
Awesome. Now, okay. Here's another one. This is another question that stumped some people. When nearing the end of a book, when it comes to the final stages before publication, which is the most challenging to deal with? Knowing when to stop editing or making the decision to say that the book is finished, I can move on?
I think the more difficult is saying that the book is finished, it's time to move on, because it's super easy to fall down that hole of, well, let me tweak this conversation and this scene. So when I felt like it was there, stepping away, even with that little voice going, "Are you sure?" That was the more difficult thing to do.
All right. And this is a new one for this interview, and I actually may use it for others. And this actually is from a friend, and they would like to know if you had to give your best elevator pitch of your book, what would it be?
So this is the part that with the imposter syndrome, I often have difficulty with. Given time, I can get it all out. But that elevator pitch, shortening it down and, thinking about, because this is a political book. There's no way to not make it political. And it's definitely skewed in a specific direction. So I never know who that person I'm pitching to, which way they lean. We live in a very divided country right now. So that always brings up a little angst for me. So then I guess I would say that this is a woman-centered book that is focused on the friendship and joy of women in the last phase of their life, and they use all of that lived experience to bring about a new way of thinking, and they implement it through magic. So I guess that would be my elevator pitch.
Well said. And before we near the end of this incredible interview, Jennifer, there's a few other rapid fire ones. And this one's actually a really cool one. Do you have any works in progress that you can tease for us?
Absolutely. So having the summers off, that's when I write the majority of that's what I did with Lady Justice. And the new one that I'm editing now is it's a twisted fairy tale. It started out being YA, but it just didn't end up that way. And it's The Cursed Life of Goldilocks.
Ooh.
So Goldie and Baby, that's what her parents call her. Their last name is Major, so they named her Ursa Major, and they call the baby for short. So there's the Goldilocks piece in there, and through their friendship, some pretty awful things happen on Friday the 13th, and they don't realize that there's a connection at first. And the story is told from Baby going to therapy, and she's been to a number of therapists, and she's kind of a little jaded, And the therapist says, so how long have you feared this date? And she's very firm with, I don't fear the date. The date is cursed. And then each week, each session, she goes into another event, and then it culminates with some stuff. But I really enjoyed writing that, and looking forward to finishing the editing and getting it out there.
Nice. Very, very nice, Jennifer. And now we arrive at the final few questions of this incredible author interview. Now, as authors, networking is very important, and I'm sure you have learned a lot from many other authors you had the opportunity to meet both in person and online. Who are those people you want to give a personal shout out to who have helped you on your journey?
So that was one of the big surprises about social media, how there were so many writers groups, and how supported the community is. So Kit Sargent, who is a fellow teacher in Chicago, she has been amazing. We do a lot of collaborative work together. Despite what I'm writing, historical fiction is my favorite genre to read. So having made that friendship with her has been awesome. Yeah, so Kit, definitely.
Awesome. Awesome. And finally, at the end of the day, what do you want people to take away from Lady Justice?
That old age doesn't have to be the end that we make it out to be in society, that wrinkles and gray hair and maybe slowing down a bit aren't the worst things that could happen to you, and that it can be a really joyful time if you approach it that way. And given the little bit of magic that's in there, hopefully that it won't take magic for us to sort of write the path that we're on right now.
Well said, Jennifer. Well said. And on that note, viewers and listeners, we conclude this incredible author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I want to give a huge thank you to Jennifer for coming on the show, making her official debut, and hopefully not the last. Jennifer, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect, as well as buy a copy of Lady Justice?
So on Instagram and Threads and TikTok, it's Jennifer.L.Speidel. Facebook, which is a lot of my readers are on Facebook. So author Jennifer L. Speidel. I do have a web page through Canva, and the same thing, if you look for Jennifer L. Speidel, that'll come up. And then where to buy the book, that's the big question right now, with the issues I've had. So through Olympia Press, the US version, you can order it that way, contacting me, and soon it will be available in bookstores through Ingram distributors.
Nice. So I will link all that down below in the description of this video. And thank you everyone for joining us for another amazing, incredible author interview here on the show. Again, a huge thank you to Jennifer for coming on the show. I wish her the very best on our journey from one author to another. And if you'd like to see her back on the show, you know what you have to do. You have to like this video, comment down below, and subscribe. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for joining us for another amazing episode. I have a few final guests for the month of April that I'm going to be showcasing today and tomorrow. And then I cannot wait to share with you all the guests I have lined up for May. Some returning faces and some new faces are going to make their appearance on the show. So if you want to stay up to date, follow me on all my social media, as well as subscribe to my newsletter on LinkedIn. And as always, this has been The Wandering Scribe and The Wandering Quill, signing out. Wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Happy Tuesday, everybody. We'll see you all in the next episode. Take care and have a wonderful day.